Hi, I'm Barbara Lee, the sex minister, and I'm in Detroit at the North American Interfaith Network's Connect Conference with Father Rod from the Episcopalian tradition. And we've been talking about sexuality and the lives of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender individuals. So, Father, you have been an advocate in this area for quite a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I used to be a major leader in the gay community, religious leader here in Detroit, and that was before I got called to work in churches in Chicago. But for a long time, I was very involved in demanding justice and equality and full recognition of gay people as good and important, vital folks that need to be cared about by the church. This was at a time when there were a lot of religious institutions that were filled with fear and anxiety and anger and rejection of gay people. And of course, that oftentimes led to gay folks being rejected by their family and friends and loved ones in their local church, which sometimes led to gay folks rejecting themselves and hating themselves and feeling like they had no opportunity in life to find meaning and hope. So people would drink a lot, commit suicide, do self-destructive things, and be very unhappy. And we were dedicated to making sure that we did the best we could to make the church feel that they needed to speak out and say, no, we don't reject and hate gay folks. We feel that God is calling us to demand justice and equality and good health care and life and love and support for LGBT people.
Such an important message. And of course, a lot of that fear was fueled by the arrival of the HIV and AIDS epidemic.
I was very involved in the AIDS program back in the 1980s and 90s. For 20 years, I ran a program called People Who Care About People with AIDS. And this was an annual Christmas healing service and celebration, a communion service, where gay folks with AIDS and their caregivers and their loved ones and their friends would be invited to come to a major church in Detroit and be prayed for and have communion and hear the gospel preached and have a really significant, important religious leader talk to them and talk to the world about how how the Bible demands that we treat gay folks and everybody else with kindness, goodness, love, and care, and work for justice and equality for everyone, and especially gay people. And that was a really radical message at that point, because at that time, in the early 80s, there were large numbers of extremely radical, angry, fundamentalist religious leaders. I'm not going to say they were Christian leaders, but religious leaders who were saying, oh, AIDS is God's curse on gay folks. And AIDS is something that just shows how terrible and cursed and awful all those gay folks are, and they need to be utterly rejected and not get good health care and not be loved by their family and be left on the streets to die. And that was kind of what a lot of religious voices were saying at that point. This was a long time ago. And the sad thing was that even as Jerry Falwell and all these really extreme voices were screaming about God's curse, you had real religious leaders in the Episcopal Church, the Methodist Church, the Unitarian Church, lots of other seriously important Presbyterians and Lutheran religious leaders who were saying, no, we don't agree with Jerry Falwell and those extremists. We believe that we as Christian people need to reach out and love and care for folks with AIDS and give them a chance to be properly given proper health care and be loved by their family and
to be treated as full human beings.
And be treated as full human beings, exactly.
And there has been a lot of progress made in that area. As you said, many of the larger denominations have embraced the community.
They've made real serious efforts on the AIDS issue and on other gay-related issues to demand justice and equality and full humanity and full acceptance and inclusion. The thing we did with the People Who Care program was we brought out all these religious voices, all these bishops, all these seriously important church leaders, and we gave them the chance to preach at the gay community, with the gay community, and the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community. And of course, we made sure that their sermons and their stories got onto the media and got on television, got in the newspapers, and got heard. This was one of the very first times that real loving and caring, and I'm going to say really legitimate religious leaders were given that kind of major forum, you know, right at that moment. 1983, 1984, 1982, it was one of the first times that these religious leaders were given a huge forum to speak up for justice and equality. And there were a lot of other things happening in the community at that point, led by a lot of other groups, but we were able to change the message, change the dialogue, and change the way that religious people were speaking about AIDS, about LGBT people, and about sex in general. You know, we helped them to feel that, you know, we needed to care about our young people who are sick and suffering. We need to not reject our sons and daughters with this terrible disease. We need to treat them like we would treat any of our children with this terrible disease. And we need to respect their partners and their loved ones and their friends and treat them with kindness. This was a big difference in the way the world was talking at that point. And this was a long time ago, but it made a big difference. Well,
and it was a long time ago, and we have made tremendous strides, but at the same time, there still are many voices of condemnation and hate, and we really need to continue to be a counterpoint to that and to really work toward that kind of change, that kind of embrace.
I agree, totally. One of the things, you who are watching this, one of the things you can do is to do exactly what Barbara's talking about. Go and talk to your pastor. Go and talk to other religious friends. Go and talk to your imam, your rabbi, your priest of all sorts. I mean, tell them that you really want them to study this issue and you really want them to stand up for equality and justice and inclusion and kindness and love toward LGBT people and other folks that get rejected. I mean, Jews get rejected by a lot of Christian folks. Gypsies get rejected by a lot of Christian folks. I mean, immigrants nowadays are being terribly rejected by a lot of religious people. And you have an opportunity to be one of the voices that says to your religious leader, I want you to talk about love and acceptance and kindness and goodness and equality and justice and taking care of people and including people rather than rejecting people. And I mean, Barbara, you've been doing this kind of thing for a long time, and you've got one of the projects that really gives this message of love, equality, and justice and inclusion and caring. And that's one of the reasons I want you to listen to this lady, because she's got vitally important messages that all of us need to hear.
We do. We need to hear it because we do live in a culture that is so filled with judgment and so filled with shame.
Oh, absolutely.
And so the big lesson that we're trying to convey to everybody is the need to truly, and these are my closing words, to love your body, to relish sex, and to marvel in this very good gift.
Sex is a great gift from God. Remember that. The first commandment that God gave Adam and Eve, the first commandment was go forth and multiply. In other words, have lots of kids, have lots of sex, enjoy it, have a good time with it, but, you know, raise these families. I mean, that was a huge commandment at that point. And God said to Adam and Eve, do it. Now, what it means today is that it's perfectly wonderful and appropriate for you to enjoy sex, do it in a very responsible, careful way. Try to do it within a really trustworthy relationship with somebody you trust, like in a marriage, hopefully in a marriage, or at least with somebody you really, really, really are committed to.
Yeah, you want to bring intentionality and discernment to the choices around your sexual encounters,
Exactly.
and not trivialize something so wonderful.
Right.
So wonderful.
Precisely.
But also to embrace that sexuality, to embrace your identity, regardless of your gender, regardless of your sexual orientation, and to claim what it means to be a truly whole and holy person.
Exactly. And do it responsibly. And don't let yourself get dragged into negative and destructive and hurtful sexual relationships, as way too many people are. I mean, so many women especially, and some guys too, get involved in very abusive, very hurtful, very destructive sexual relationships, and that leads to depression and alcoholism and terrible problems and death. I mean, a lot of young ladies get involved in prostitution, and it's a terrible life for them, and it's usually something where they get drugged up and dragged into it, and usually by somebody who pretends that he loves her.
Yeah, human trafficking is another whole issue that we will also be exploring in another video blog. So for now, I want to thank you so much, Father Rod, for your time, for your insight, and for your ongoing work for inclusion and full justice for everyone.
Thank you very much. It's been delightful to be with you today. Thank you, dear. May the good Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord give you peace. In Jesus' name, amen.
Namaste.
Very good.